This is BACKtalk by Successful Black Parenting Magazine, the most listened to podcast for parents by parents.
Welcome to BACKtalk, the premier podcast from Successful Black Parenting Magazine, featuring in-depth conversations, expert insights on crucial topics for Black families. We are ranked one of the top 4 Black family podcasts on FeedSpot, and I'm your host, Janice Robinson Celeste. Now, have you ever felt that your past experiences might be holding you back from achieving your dreams? Today, we're diving into a powerful story of resilience and transformation. If you ever wondered how to rise above adversity, this episode is for you. So stay tuned. We're about to get started. So I want to tell you today, we have a special person in our audience. I'm going to bring her up in a minute. I want you guys to share this podcast with everyone. And we have Ivy Price-Ware. Hi, Ivy. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
And you are an author of the book, Only Heaven Knows My Heart. And it's a page turner. It's about overcoming adversity. And Ivy, you've been through it, girl.
Yes. Yes, I have.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and some of your journey and what experiences shaped you into who you are today?
Okay, well, I would like to start off talking about who I am now, which is currently an educational advocate who has 23 years of teaching experience and leadership experience in Cincinnati Public Schools. 2 years ago, I did an early retirement to launch my own business, which is called Ivy's Dream. And I do a lot of consulting and advocacy there. And that's what's heavily driven by me being in an urban area, seeing students that were coming from very diverse backgrounds, dealing with multiple different situations such as trauma, coming from households that just in education we don't consider traditional, and seeing those complexities within the classroom over 23 years really encouraged me to be the person that I am as far as sharing who I am and why I am who I am. I do come from an extremely difficult early childhood where I endured a lot as far as being in a home born to a mother that was struggled with addiction. And I'm initially from Tennessee, and we migrated to Detroit, Michigan. And during this time, I was about 4 to 5 years old, and my sister, I had a younger sister that was 2, and I was her primary caregiver during that time for 5 years. And there was a lot of experiences that we had. And at that time, I learned how to be strong, how to be a survivor, and how to just, survive and take care of my younger sister. With that being said, we were able to overcome that by having a mother that did, decide that she wanted better for her life. So we were sent back to Tennessee with our family for a moment there to be in foster care, where my mother came to Ohio to get her life together. So coming to Ohio was a pivotal moment for us because we were able to see my mother in a different light and different capacity. And again, that marked a resilient time in my mother's life that encouraged me to understand that we can, that I, and any adversity could be overcome based on how much you want the change. And I learned about 8 seeing this change within my mom that, situations and adversity does not have to define you. So that was some of the earlier things that I went through. And through that, of course, being through some of the traumas I went through comes my own decisions, things that I did, and out of a hurt and some of the pain that I had been through, which leads me into teen pregnancy and things like that. But it's definitely been a strong journey for myself, but I feel like a very relevant journey to who I am today and what I've represented, especially in the educational platform, being in the educational space that I was able to serve so graciously in for 23 years.
No, your book is amazing. We're going to get into teen pregnancy and how you overcame it. I was just telling you before the show, found myself pregnant at 17.
Yes.
But I was in my first semester of college. People don't realize that you can be in college at 17, but I was in college. And for me, I was trying to get away from my boyfriend at the time, because he's kind of stalker, like before stalking really became a thing.
Right.
So he was smothering me on top of all that. So I tried to get away and go into the Navy at 17. Found out I was pregnant. I couldn't pass the physical. Boy, changes your life, right? 17, people tell you things like, oh, your life is over. And, it's different. It's a big challenge. And I know you felt some of those challenges. I remember saying to people, once I did overcome it, that it's like all my friends who didn't have kids, they got a pass to go around this brick wall, right?
Right.
Where I had to sit there with my kids and dig through with my nails through the brick wall to get to the other side. That's what it felt like. So how did it feel to you now that you can look back on it in hindsight and being a teen mom? How do you explain how you became who you are now?
Well, obviously my journey started a little early. I think I was 16 when I found out that I was pregnant. And in high school, in honors classes, in a prestigious suburban area, predominantly white school. So the initial response of the community was, okay, she is not going to be able to survive this. And I had a dream at that point to be a teacher. I knew how much and how passionate I was about children. And I remember one of my teachers, and I actually loved this teacher. She said to me, I mentioned me going to college and still pursuing my dream as being a teacher. And she looks at me and she goes, Ivy, you will not be able to be a teacher. You're going to be a mom now. And I just remember like my entire body just trembling. It was burning. And I thought to myself, I am going to be everything that I want to be. And if nothing else, my child is going to motivate me. I will now have a life that depends on me, that needs me. So me not giving up on my dreams was never an option. So at 17, and one day I gave birth to my first son. And I knew if nothing else, I owed him something. I owed him an example. And the motivation was there. And I finished school. Again, I was in honors classes. And I just knew at this time, this was the last time that I would give up. And with that came a year later, my daughter that I had, it wasn't a year later, it was actually 11 months and about 10 days before I had my daughter, which was shocking again, because I was still in high school, a senior at that time. And at that point, I know what the common thought was. This girl is done. She is not going to make it. However, I entered into Miami University of Ohio at 18 years old. I was living on my own. And I started on that campus, and Miami is a very prestigious campus here in Ohio. And I know for a fact I was the only person there at 18 years old with 2 children. But that didn't deter me, because I knew that I had a dream and I wanted to continue with my dream. And I wasn't going to let anybody's thoughts about me stop me from being who I wanted to be.
Oh, wow. I mean, that's deep, because you had 2 children before you got out of high school.
I did.
Now, here's the thing. I know in my case, for me to continue on, I needed a lot of support. Did you have that support?
I did. My mother, again, we talked about the transformation in her, was my number one supporter. She definitely encouraged me. She was there. She made sure that she pushed me and gave me every support that I needed. So if those times came where I had night classes, my mother was the one that had my children. And she was definitely my number one supporter, I think, at that point.
Now, she wasn't always there for you, unfortunately, right?
Because
in your book, Only Heaven Knows My Heart, you discuss the painful aspects of your childhood and what motivated you to share those moments with your readers, and knowing that your mom went through so much on her own as well. What made you decide to first of all write this, and then what did you go through?
I decided to write it because I felt like it was important to share. At the point that I started to write my book, I'd already finished, I want to say 21 years of teaching, a very esteemed teaching. Actually did a lot of leadership in the district with curriculum and leading my peers in the area of mathematics. So at that point, that you've established yourself as a person that's successful in their career. However, what I did understand is most people did not know where I came from or what I had actually gone through. And I think for me, I was motivated to share that space because after accomplishing so much, I wanted people to understand the same accomplished woman that you taught with, or the same accomplished teacher that was esteemed in the classroom, had this very humble start. And I really wanted to give that to my students, to my young adults that, may be enduring some of the same traumas that I experienced. I really, there's a saying that hurt people hurt people. But for me, I understood that healed people that have hurt can definitely help people.
That's powerful. That's very powerful.
Yeah.
Without saying too much about what's in your book,
Okay.
can you give like a synopsis so people understand what you went through?
Absolutely. So again, I started out in early childhood, and my book goes back to like a very, 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 very young age. I believe I started the memory around 2, and it describes some of the things that myself and my younger sister endured. We were again born to a mother that was struggled with addiction. And, that at times caused us to have to be in foster care. And then we went from being in Tennessee to migrating to Michigan, where there was a lot more access for my mother to have more tools and more access to opioids and things like that. So with that, her being unable to tend to us or leaving us with babysitters, her trusting that they could render care for us, but also being impaired in her judgment caused a lot of things to happen to myself, and caused me to understand that I had to be a protector for my sister. And a lot of times I was that buffer between my sister experiencing certain things because I was the older sister, just dealing with some hunger and isolated times where it was just myself and my sister. And at this time I'm between 5 and 7 years old. So we kind of endured that, and it was extremely traumatic. Being in a big city like Detroit, and as we all know, what Detroit, is a very urban area, heavily stricken by drugs and violence. So being a young age child, that was very difficult for me. So that was, our experience through about 8 years old. And then we had a good transition, and I think we were beneficial because I don't know that a lot of people have the experience of seeing a transformation, because about 8 years old ended the trauma, but then the trauma was still embedded in me. So that's where you have me kind of migrating to Ohio, people seeing my mother was phenomenal after that experience. She went to a treatment program here in Ohio, and she actually found faith. And so in Ohio, people knew my mother that had found faith, that had gone back to school, gotten her degree, and was a mother that supported my sister and I beyond measure. And so they could not connect some of the things that they saw in me, which was a very rebellious and hurting young lady that had experienced and felt a lot of resentment because of the things that I had went through and because of the roles I had to play for my younger sister and myself, just to ensure that we were safe. So that's part of the book. So but it's very detailed in the book. I'm very descriptive. I don't hold back because I understand some of the things that I went through. I saw that the entire time I was teaching. I could recognize when a child walked into my classroom just based off of who they were living with. Where's mom? I understood when that child will be hurting because they had a mom that was on drugs and they couldn't see their mom. Or when I have students coming in with foster care that are in foster care, I understood that pain and level of hurt. So I was, connecting with a lot of students that I taught as I went through this process of writing. And then, of course, my teen pregnancy, I think, had everything to do with me just still hurting, but not necessarily knowing how to heal through that. And so I was looking for an opportunity to receive that love, but not understanding that maybe early pregnancy was not the answer. But what I knew out of that is I was going to do what I wanted to do as far as my dreams and hopes, because I definitely wanted to create a different atmosphere in life for my children. Although I recognized immediately that at 16, you're probably not going to be with this man anymore. There will be a separation, and now your children will have parents that are not married. So definitely there's some things that came along with that I understood as I was going through the process. So I give a very detailed account of teen pregnancy, the multiple pregnancies. Not only that, but I had 2 children while in college as well. So when I graduated from Miami University, I believe I was 25 years old. At that time, I had 4 children, a newborn. And I felt extremely privileged to be able to share that space with my children, because at that point I'm walking into my career. And I knew that I wasn't going to look back at that point. And I knew that I had accomplished something that most people cannot accomplish or feel like they can accomplish when they have the pregnancies, especially as early as I did, and as many as I did.
Right. Now, I'm so happy that your mother made a complete transformation, found the church, found God. That's fantastic. Now, you described one traumatic event that really hit me hard. And your mom and I think a friend went after this guy. I think you were like 4, and it lasted with you, where the guy, he was a babysitter, and he told you to pull down your panties. And you told your mom, and then tell us what happened.
Okay, so yes, I believe he was babysitting me, and he was
Mhm.
a family friend, and I could see him eyeballing me. I was a very intuitive child, and I could see him eyeballing me, and I felt like something was there. And just as I felt something was there, he tells me to pull my panties down. So I'm like, no, but at that point I'm like, he's probably gonna make me, he's probably gonna make me. So I just say no, and I meant no. And thank God that he did not pursue anything beyond that. Like, he understood my no was my no. But I did communicate that to my mother, and she was hysterical. She went berserk. So she goes and she proceeds to get a gun. She's like, I'm going to go get him. She grabs the gun and she dashes out the door. I mean, she is just beyond herself. And so for me, it was like, oh my God. So at that point, I felt like telling was not the thing to do, because I knew, I'm like, I don't want my mom to go to jail. I mean, and she grabbed, I believe, a 9mm and walked out of that door. And I didn't know how that looked. I didn't know if my mother would return. So that was a very traumatic experience for me. And I understood, when I became a parent, why my mother felt that way. She definitely didn't want the intentional pain on me. Although, we did have trauma with her, but she was never the type like, oh, I'm going to give my daughters up as a sacrifice for my addiction. That was not who my mother was. So she was very much in pursuit of taking his life. It did not happen, thank God, but she was very upset. But it was traumatizing for me.
I was wondering what happened to that guy after, because you didn't do that closure. I don't remember the closure part. So I was wondering, like, did they find him?
I don't know if they did. I know that I never saw him again. So to be completely honest, I don't know what the end result was, because that was beyond my understanding. So my mother returned. She never went to jail. So I just assumed the best, that we just disconnected from this person and he just went on with his life.
Well, okay. We hope so.
That's what I hope. My mom would have a fit, like you're telling that story. And I told you not to put certain things. So I said, Mom, I did not. I included in an act, but I didn't give the result or anything. And I really didn't know what happened beyond her leaving the
Right.
house.
No, that was an important story for you, because that you remembered that, and it caused you a lot of trauma
Yes.
as you grew.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
because of a pervert, you had to deal with that, even though he didn't complete the act. It's just the fact that where he put you in a state of mind.
Yeah, the
Can hurt you
violation was
easily.
definitely felt. The
Yes.
violation, yeah, even at 4 years old, I felt violated.
Yeah.
I understood that that was wrong for him to ask me. So it definitely created a lot of trauma there, and fear, and just a lack of, I didn't feel safe. And how do I control it? This is a grown man. So it definitely put definitely an impactful moment as far as a traumatic experience for me.
Right. I just want to make a point, because at age 4, you were only
Yes.
4, right? And people do, benign types of things to scare kids or whatever, and they say, "Oh, they're not going to remember it. They're only 4." Yeah, you remember, especially if it's
Absolutely.
traumatic.
Yes.
Keep that in mind. They do remember.
Yes.
They will remind you of it too later. So
Yeah.
now, let's talk about those multiple teen pregnancies, because I wanted to focus more on teen pregnancies, because we really haven't talked about it on this show. But what advice would you give to young mothers who might find themselves in this situation?
I think for me, the first advice is, don't let your children be a stumbling block. It's a stepping stone. It's a learning opportunity. And for me, that's how I proceeded with my endeavor with being a teen mom. My kids were never a mistake, because I understand the creator, understood the foundation of who I was and what would happen in my life prior to me coming on this earth. So take that as an opportunity to just, what am I supposed to get out of this? What can I do? Find a support system, but never see it as I have to give up. I can't follow my dreams. Life is over for me, because those are the things that we're told. Like even with me, I described it a little earlier that a teacher, someone that I highly esteem, told me, you cannot do this. They also took me over to a Miller Brewery. I was in advanced classes, and they took me to Miller Brewery. It was like a vocational program they have for teen moms. And they said, so listen, you guys probably won't do well in a college space just because there's so many responsibilities that come along with parents. So you need to think of like places like Miller Brewery. And I'm walking through the brewery like, oh, this is not me. I'm not working at a Miller Brewery. Like, congrats, hats off to those that work in a brewery, but that's not my destination. I'm sorry. You're not going to tell me what my destination is. And so to my young teens, don't let anybody tell you what your destination is. You are in charge of your destiny, regardless of what happens and what may be contrasting to what you think is meant for you. Contrast does happen in life, but never let it deter you. So don't let your babies be a reason why you don't continue and become the greatest person you can be for yourself and for your child.
No, absolutely. Now, I just have to say, because I know some people are going to listen to this, somebody somewhere is going to say, oh, you're encouraging teen pregnancy. No, we are not encouraging teen pregnancy. And I'm going to reiterate the story I just said, where, when I got pregnant at 17 in college at 17, I told people, I said, hey, this is difficult. It felt like a brick wall that my friends got to go around, and I had to claw through it with my children beside me to get to the other side that they had already gotten to. So it is not an easy feat, but it doesn't mean that you can't achieve, you can't get where you want to go.
Right.
And a support system in your family is very important. I know if I didn't have my mom, my cousins, my uncles, all my family to be there for me when I needed them. I even took my daughter to one of my lectures, once.
Right.
I'll never forget that. She was about 4 years old. And I'll never forget, the professor was on the board writing something and lecturing, and we were in the back, and she goes, all obnoxious like that. And he turns around and he goes, I didn't know I was that boring. I just start laughing. But we had to do what we had to do,
Right. It reminds me of a quick memory, and I know this is not scripted, but same. I had the 1.5-year-old they were 1 and 2, and they had chicken pox, and they could not go to daycare for 2 weeks. So I understood enough about chicken pox, like, well, people that have had it can be around it. So I had to take them to school with me a few times. And I remember sitting in the back of the class, and I had snacks for them. And I said to them, for every time mommy looks and you're not talking and you're not screaming and you don't make a noise, I gave them like a 1 M&M, and I had 1 pack of M&Ms, but that lasted us for like an hour-and-a-half lecture. And they did not make a noise though. They were perfect because they knew mommy would give them an M&M I checked in like every 5 minutes, and I would give them an M&M. And so they had to sit in classroom, and they actually did a great job, during that time. I was extremely nervous because everyone was looking at me, and I'm again in a classroom. I'm 19 years old. My peers are my age, and they're like, are those her kids? So yes, you have to do what you have to do for your children.
And that's a great segue, because I was going to ask you about feeling judged and misunderstood. But how did you cope with that stigma?
I think for me, I'm very, very much headstrong when I want to be. And I understood the judgment was definitely there. People would go as extreme as to call my mom, like every year I was in college, and ask my mom, like, is she still in college? Is she still in college? Is she going to make it? And so for me, that was a motivation. Like, I know that you can have your understanding of me, but I knew deep down in me what I had in me. I knew why I had in me. I knew the whys. I knew the reasons. I didn't feel obligated to share those reasons because some people had their own thoughts. Like, how could she be so rebellious? She had a great mom. Her mom was very supportive. Her mom helped out in the community. My mother was a pillar when we moved to Ohio. And so they totally misunderstood who I was as a person, and definitely underestimated my ability to be very driven when I need to be driven. So again, I think, the misunderstanding was just people not really knowing who Ivy was. And they were looking at my situation, especially with the teen pregnancy, and trying to define me. But for me, I'm like, you won't define me, because I will walk across that stage. And I actually walked across the stage with my peers, but I walked across a year later because I had a master's degree. So I think, again, just the misunderstood part was just people really just not knowing that what I had inside of me was drive, passion, and I've never been a quitter. Like I've never given up, regardless of what space I've been in. I knew that I was built to be a survivor based on everything I had already survived prior to me becoming a teen mom.
Girl, you are a survivor. Only Heaven Knows My Heart, that book.
Yes.
Oh my God. You guys can find it on Amazon. It's not a long read. It's a good read. I read it over like 2-3 days here and there. It was really good. And it talks about how you survive. And I was like, what? But I gotta tell you, when you kept getting pregnant again, I was like, oh my God, not again. She needs a break. Poor lady. No.
I do want to go back to the space because I don't know if I got a chance to speak about that, because you said
Please.
people will look at this and say, hey,
Yeah.
I'm not advocating for anyone to get pregnant at a teenage age.
Mhm.
However, the reality is it happens. So I
Mhm.
think there has to always be things set in place and examples set in place of people that were able to overcome, and what did they do in the space when they became pregnant. So again, I'm definitely not an advocate for any teen getting pregnant. However, if you do get in this situation, I think it's more important for them to understand people have been pregnant, they've had children at a teen age, and still been able to do and accomplish the things that they want to accomplish.
Absolutely. You need to
And
know if you're in that situation that that's not the end.
right,
How can you be a good mother to your child if you think that's it?
right,
That's it for you. So,
absolutely.
how old are your children now?
I have a 29-year-old, 28-year-old, 24-year-old, and a 22-year-old.
Oh my gosh. And how are they doing?
They are doing well. They're doing well. I have 2 down in Florida that are working in the educational system. They're working for Apex. So they go into the schools, and that's my 29-year-old and my 24-year-old. And they train students to be leaders, and they work with them on leadership skills, and they raise money. And so they travel all over. I believe just last week they were in Denver. So they're very much inspiring me. Now my kids did all they kind of went. I have 2 that have associates, and then 2 that are kind of more business and entrepreneurial minded. And so for me as a mom, I'm like, did you guys know how hard I worked to get a degree and get a 4-year degree? But again, I have to let them have their own paths. And so again, they kind of are doing their own thing. But my oldest is a franchise owner actually in Apex. So I'm extremely proud of all of them. I have one that is a high general manager for one of the food chains, Jimmy John's, over in Indiana. So that's my second oldest, my daughter. So I'm extremely proud of their efforts, and they're going to get what they want. They definitely are go-getters.
Well, I'm glad you shared that, because that's the other stigma, right? That people think if you had a baby when you're a teenager, single moms, they can't raise children. And then if you get pregnant when you're a teen, or your kids are going to be this and that. And if you have drugs in your family, they're going to be drug addicts. It's just all these stigmas they have, and it's not true. And I actually have success stories with my kids too, so I understand. But go ahead, say what you're going to say. I see you got.
No, I'm sorry. I was agreeing with you. I was agreeing with you. Like, yes, definitely.
Absolutely. So, and I'm proud to hear that. Now, for the people who are listening, just so you know, you can ask Ivy a question. You can post in the comments on Facebook, and if you're watching on YouTube, and I can ask her now, but you have to do it early, because we're going to be winding up soon. So if you have any questions, this is the time to type them in there. Now, we talked about you turning your purpose and your pain into purpose, right?
Yeah.
And you did that, and now you're a teacher. What do you teach?
No, actually, so I retired from the
You
educational
that's
system,
right.
and
You
I'm a
just said.
fully engaged business owner that has an educational organization. It's called Ivy's Dream. So
That's
at
right.
this point in my life, I am fully advocating. I'm in educational spaces, training teachers how to deal with students that have endured trauma, training teachers on how to interact with students that endure poverty. So I'm in that space now. So I'm fully my own boss right now. So I did do an early retirement in 2022. So I am working strictly for Ivy's Dream. I'm the CEO and founder.
Okay. And once the educator, you're always an educator.
Yes,
So,
always.
so
Always.
what did you teach prior to that?
So for years I taught math, from ranging from ages 3rd grade through 8th grade.
Okay.
I also did a lot of leadership within the district as far as curriculum specialist and steering committee, which was led the Cincinnati public school system with their efforts to create curriculum around math and things like that. So that's where I spent my last year or two, just coaching and in those spaces of leadership in the Cincinnati Public Schools.
Okay. Well, I'm glad we have a question from Malia. I was about to get into this, so I'm going to let Malia ask, because she says, how much did your faith impact your ability to overcome so much? Can you touch on that?
My faith had everything to do with me overcoming. Again, me seeing my mom accept Christ into her life. I knew that God was real because I knew what we had endured for the first 8 years of our life. So for me, that was a connection because I saw the tremendous turnaround in my mom. So I knew at one point, although for years I fought it because I wanted to create my own life. And I was very stern and I'm going to create my life. But I had to yield to the understanding that my spiritual leader, God, was the answer. And accepting him has been integral in the strength that I needed, leaning on him and leaning not to my own understanding, trusting him when I couldn't trust anyone else. So that's been my faith and my spiritual connection with God has definitely been the reason why I feel like I can do what I need to do. Just understanding that my creator, nobody can mold and shape you like the person that created you. And so I definitely feel like that's been the number one key to all of my success. I have to give it to my awesome and mighty God that I serve.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Malia, for that question. Now, as a mentor and advocate, what do you see as the most pressing issues facing children and families today?
So this one is what I'm passionate about because I am in meetings. I will leave this interview today and go spearhead a couple meetings this afternoon. So that's my advocacy kicking in Ivy's Dream. So that's where I am supporting the family and I'm charging and holding the school completely accountable. And I can be a force in those rooms. So what I see is consistent. Parents that are from different backgrounds, such as maybe urban areas, parents that may be single, consistently, their interpretation and understanding of the policies is very low, and they don't know how to properly navigate. So with that being said, the school can completely take advantage of that because they understand certain parents don't understand how to navigate this educational system. So you have a lot of rights being abused or overlooked. And I am there in that space to make sure I'm holding the school accountable. And just in this platform that I have, and I actually operate in Ohio, Atlanta, and Georgia and Florida currently, serving students in all three of those spaces. I've been able to charge the school and demand that you not take away the rights of these parents. So I think the challenge is, parents becoming more aware of their rights and responsibilities. And that is my overall goal, is to continue to inform, educate, because those things will help close the gaps. As we see, there are so many groups of students and parents that are marginalized. And we look at the data and we say, okay, well, Black boys are 5 times more likely to be kicked out of school. Well, what I'm learning through my advocacy is because most of us don't know to say, I want a hearing, present your evidence, and let's see if you have enough evidence to support the suspension. And the school will send the letter home and say, stay home for 5 days. But if you look in the fine print, it says you have a right, but it's very fine print. So if you don't know this, you wouldn't know that does not mean it's a notice to intend to suspend, but it does not have to yield in an actual suspension. So me just educating and supporting families and helping them understand their rights has just been so powerful in the last 2 years. I cannot explain to you how powerful that has been and how much I think is really going to be a game-changing experience for families that are often underserved and underrepresented in the educational system.
That's fantastic. And you know what? We're all cheering you on. Tyra Hayes just said she's so proud of you. So guys, these are people who are leaving comments in our Facebook page. So if you don't know, you can leave comments on Facebook and on YouTube, and or you can ask questions. So no, that I think that it is fantastic that, everything you're saying is right on point. And I think it's very helpful to families, the hearing. I always tell people, if you don't get any satisfaction at school, there's always the board meetings as well,
Exactly.
that you can advocate for yourself. So Yes. And they always have room for the public to speak for
Speak.
2 to 3 minutes. So make sure
Yes,
you take advantage of that when you need to. And
yes.
so let's talk a little bit about mentorship in your advocacy. What do you see is with that? Is that different as far as what you see the families need more of? Or I should say, how, and so how can we support them as the public, better? What can we do on top of that for your advocacy?
I think just being available and present and available for those opportunities, because there is a high need for mentorship. There is a high need for support in these areas. And I'm just hoping and believing God that this will grow and become a phenomenon. Like, how do we provide the proper supports? Because with those supports, like I said, in the 2 years that I've done this full time, I can see the strides. I can see the the parents understanding change. I have some parents that don't call me as much because they're like, I'm able to go in here and I'm able to do and say what I know is right for my child and what I do know is wrong for my child. So I think, again, just having those persons really willing to step up and be in those places and provide those supports to families. And sometimes we get in our own space and it's like we forget about everybody else. Like, look, I'm doing good. My kids are doing good in school. So again, just the continual understanding that we all owe it to everyone to kind of look back and give back. And I think that definitely is going to create a space of community, but also collaboration, empowerment, if that makes sense.
It makes absolute sense. So we have another question we have time for. So how do the schools receive you as an advocate, and how do you overcome that resistance? Because that got to be some stories there, I'm sure. You gotta
Um,
have it.
I think initially there could be a lot of intimidation. And I'm just gonna be frank. Who is this Black woman coming in here telling us? Because I'm gonna tell you right now, I do not hold back, especially if I'm called into a situation and I know that you have violated the parent rights. And I know that you violated the parent rights. However, you don't see me coming because it depends on the situation. I may introduce myself via email first, or I may just choose to show up to the meeting with the parent. So I definitely think that there's intimidation initially, but me being an educator, I also have the ability to connect with educators. Like, if our common goal, which it should be, is to be here for the student, we should be able to work together. You shouldn't be mad. Why are you mad? Because ultimately your goal should be to move in the best interest of the student. And that is also my goal. So why are you mad? Because at the end of the day, if you're mad, you don't need to be in this space. You don't need to be an educator, because we should be working together to make things happen for this student. So if we walk out of this meeting and we on two different sides, then I know you truly don't need to be here. And I don't mind calling the superintendent. And God has really supported me. And I have superintendents that completely support my work. Ivy, I know this is needed. I am the superintendent of this school district, and I know these teachers don't know how to teach urban students. So I have that backing and support in a lot of the schools that I'm in. But I definitely think it can be very intimidating. But I think they understand the goal is that I'm there for the student. So those true educators kind of get the goal, and we're able to partner and work things out on behalf of the student and family in most cases. But some of them probably still are a little anxious when I attend the meetings, like, okay, they're making sure they're on their P's and Q's. And that's what we want. We want that opportunity for our students. We want them to be properly educated. We want their needs to be properly addressed. So for me, I don't mind how I look. I know what I know. And God allowed me to be in that space for 22 years to interpret the system to the level that I do, and really, really, really be that force for my parents. So, and it's driving change and driving accountability.
Okay. Now you are in your right space, because
Yes.
I can see that you like
Oh, yes. That is my,
bulldog type mentality behind you. You are not
yes,
playing.
yes,
You're going to get satisfaction.
yes.
So
For my families, I definitely believe. And I've always, even in my teaching, I would have to step out of my role and talk to my principals, and say, listen, this isn't right. So don't have me in a meeting, because I'm gonna tell you exactly what's wrong. And I know you're my principal, but I'm gonna tell you right now, don't suspend Devontae. But Jacob cussed 3 teachers out last week. I'm not going for it. I don't
that part.
stand for that. And that's who I've been as an educator, because those types of things are happening. And that needs to be addressed within this entire school system to stop those margins and those gaps. So I'm very, very much passionate about that. I had 23 years, 22 years being in the space of seeing it happen, but also being able to advocate. But now they've let me loose and let me do it full time, and I'm loose.
You are so funny. You are loved. Look at this. I just love you, my sister Ivy. So proud of you. Blessing on you. I wish I was here.
I
And
think the person commenting is Malia Arnett Archie. So if we go
uh-huh,
back to my story of trauma,
uh-huh.
that is my younger sister that endured a lot of,
Oh,
and she,
Malia.
I
Oh,
just have to
that's
let you know,
right.
I just have to let you know, Celeste, she is
I love it.
her own law firm. Malia is a lawyer, and she also has a podcast studio. But this is what you can do when you have that spirit and God has really, really blessed you to
I'm
be.
all choked up.
The younger sister that I want to protected is a lawyer, and I think she's going into her 16th year, but she actually has her own law firm now.
I am so choked up. Hi, Malia. We are so happy that you joined in. Oh my
Mhm.
gosh. I read your story and how your sister was protective of you. And it was, I mean, everybody should read this book. Actually, it should be a movie at least on Lifetime or something. Let's get
Look,
Lifetime in here. You guys start tagging Lifetime, okay? Because with
I
that book, because it's
agree.
important. I don't believe I'm crying. God, I'm such a
Go ahead, Miss Celeste. You go ahead and speak that. Go ahead
you
and
got me
let that
choked
manifest.
up.
Let
You
that
got
manifest. Let
you
that
got me so
manifest.
choked up. But yes, we got to get Lifetime up in here.
Yes, absolutely.
And then we have Tyra. Tyra has a question for you. Do you plan to take your advocacy business outside of Cincinnati?
I do. I have already expanded. I again, I'm in Georgia. I've been in Tennessee, Florida, and I expect that again, I want this to become a national phenomenon. That it's adaptive and it becomes contagious. Like we know that it's needed. Most educators know like we need a level of advocacy for these parents that don't understand their rights. So my overall goal is that yes, it expands and it becomes a national phenomenon that we kind of add that layer of support for all families. So yes, absolutely.
Well, that's fantastic. So, I was going to ask you what your dreams and aspirations are going forward.
Yes, just again, that's one of my aspirations is to make this a national phenomenon. Make sure that
Yeah.
every parent has this access because I feel like I see my parents and one parent looked at me one day and she goes, I feel like I walked in here with a lawyer. I'm like, well, no, the lawyer works. I do. My sister is my lawyer for my company, but I'm not a lawyer. But I think I have that boldness and I can definitely handle myself accordingly. But they feel so empowered. So I just want this to be something
Yes.
that, again, that's contagious, that is adapted among states and for the schools to recognize and districts to recognize that this is a layer of support. It's sometimes difficult to be in education and be the advocate as well. So I think, again, just I want Ivy's dream to be in all. If I could have a dream, it would be that Ivy's dream is in every state and that we're able to support students and families in these difficult situations just to understand the rights and have that extra padded layer of support. And we see those successes in students and we start to see the gaps closing for those kids that are traditionally, again, underrepresented, underserved, that perform lower on testing, that are less likely to enter college or enter higher levels of education. I just want to see those gaps truly close for all students.
Right. Now, your sister is so cool. She said, yes, she's still my protector. So yeah, I bet you, I can see it in you. I can really see it in you. Now, this is fantastic. So guys, go out. Once you go out and get the book, I want you to tell people how to get the book and where it's available so that, we can get Lifetime, tag Lifetime once you read it. Okay.
Thank you so very much. So do you want me to explain where to get
Yes.
it?
Just
Okay,
explain where to get it.
it is on Amazon. And you can always reach out on any of my social media platforms and personally inbox me because I've realized during this whole being an author that some people love their books signed, even if they don't know me.
All
So
right.
you can definitely reach out for special orders on any of my social media platforms, DM me, and I will make sure that I get the pertinent information and have your book signed and mailed to you. So on Facebook, I am Ivy's Dream. I feel like on Instagram, linked, and TikTok, I am Ivy's Dream. The words I am Ivy's Dream.
No, that's fantastic. I'm going to see if I can put the overlay of your book cover here really quickly so people can see it and see how we can do that. So it's not the best quality, unfortunately. I'm sorry, but this is it. So you guys know what you're looking for. Let me take down so they can see the whole thing from the comments. Let's move that comment down from Tyra real quick. So this is what happens when you got to do everything yourself.
You're doing a
Hold
great
on.
job.
There you go. There you go. But there you are. So that's the book cover, just so you guys know what it looks like. But make sure you go and get it for that's going to help you. Now you have your business is a nonprofit. Is it nonprofit or for profit?
So part of it is nonprofit. Ivy's Dream is not nonprofit. However, the Diamonds with Destiny, the mentoring program, is nonprofit. So part of me is profit and the other is nonprofit. But Ivy's Dream actually is not a nonprofit. It's
so my question is, all this advocacy, how do you fund your business? Because that's one thing we struggle with as entrepreneurs is how do you fund your business?
I think so. Peter says to God gave Peter instructions to cash your net and move it. So for me, I am able to use my other abilities as an exemplified educator to funnel money. So again, I have independent contracts with schools where I'm in a couple hours a week where I can join the space to do things that I'm an expert in, like coach teachers in teaching the area of mathematics. So those opportunities have been far and many for me. So I've been able to use that to kind of like funnel the part where it's weaker, if that makes sense. So I'll kind of use all of my expertise to help me kind of funnel it all in, if that makes sense. So I do some work in the schools where I'm hired to come in and they use my expertise, if that makes sense.
Well, we need to make sure that you can continue to do this and continue to expand. So we got to figure out somehow a way. I don't know, somebody wants to start a GoFundMe or whatever, so that you can continue to do what you do and expand on what you do. Because parents do need that advocate bulldog behind them to make sure that, their rights aren't being violated, their child's rights aren't being violated. So that's why I was asking, like, you need to be able to expand on what you do. Is there a final message or a piece of advice you would like to leave our audience today?
Yes, I think I would like everyone to understand what I represent. And I think that is, no matter what experience you have in life, take it as a part of who you are to become and don't let it determine who you are not. Continue to move and walk in destiny and understand if you are breathing air, God has created you and you do have a destiny. And if you don't know your destiny, connect with people, find support, but never take life for granted. Take and swallow every bit of life.
That is a fantastic message to end with. So, Ivy, I'm going to thank you for joining us today. It's been a pleasure having you. Absolute pleasure.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure speaking with you today.
Okay, stay tuned. And I want to give a big shout out to all of you tuning in, especially Malia, and engaging with us here on BACKtalk by Successful Black Parenting Magazine, the syndicated podcast that's a must for Black parents everywhere. And make sure you follow us on social media. The more you engage, the more we all can thrive. Okay, so we'll be back next week with more. Until next time, I wish you all the best and much success. So take care, everyone.
Thanks for tuning in to BACKtalk by Successful Black Parenting Magazine. We'll see you soon.